Hi, and welcome back to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to continue learning the 1 to 4 player game Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, designed by Isaac Childress and published by Cephalofair Games, who helped sponsor this video. We're covering the rules to this game over its first 5 tutorial scenarios, and this is the video for scenario 4. So if you haven't already, be sure to check out the videos we have for the first 3 scenarios, which you'll find links to in the description below. But otherwise, join me at the table, and let's see what's next. To set up this scenario, we turn to pages 8 and 9, but you'll notice here we also have a page number showing from the supplemental scenario book. This time, however, it doesn't show a dotted line to separate it from the other pages like we saw in the last scenario. And that means when you turn to the related page, you're going to find a section of map. This way, when playing, you're not just limited to the size of 2 pages. Now you can have even bigger maps to play on. We have 2 monsters this time, stone golems and zealots, so you get their components out as usual, except for the rest of the campaign, you'll ignore any monster cards labeled as basic and instead use their full 8-card ability decks. These basic monster decks were just included for the first 3 monsters you face in the game as you're learning the rules. From now on, monsters like the zealots will have more options and behave in more interesting and more complicated ways. The map in this scenario is one big room, so I've already set up all of the monsters here, but don't forget to go over the goals and also the special rules. Here we're told that to win, we have to both destroy all of the summoning stones and kill all of the enemies. Hexes surrounded by a yellow border are objectives, so this is one of the summoning stones here. And we're told in the special rules that these have a C+1 hit point value, which represents their health, and that they can only be targeted by melee attacks. Now when it says their hit points are C+1, the C stands for the number of characters in the game. Here we're going to have 2 characters, so this stone's health is 2 plus 1, or 3. And to track the damage that you'll do to these while playing, just put the damage tokens directly on their hex. Characters will treat objectives as if they're enemies, and that's why your characters can target them with attacks. But just keep in mind, an objective cannot receive conditions. You can't poison or muddle a summoning stone, for example. You also can't affect them with push or pull effects. In some ways, an objective is similar to an obstacle in that figures can't enter their spaces, though you can use a jump to go over them. But despite those similarities, objectives are not considered obstacles for gameplay purposes. In other words, the demolitionist who might have an attack which can destroy an obstacle cannot target an objective and destroy it that way. Once an objective has been destroyed, you put one of these tokens on it, and now you can move on or through that hex. In the special rules, we have a section break, but unlike the last scenario where these were triggered by opening doors, this time it says here that you resolve this first one after any 2 summoning stones have been destroyed. And pay attention because the text here continues down to the other supplemental page as well. It says that you would spawn 1 normal and 1 elite zealot into the hex labeled B, along with additional zealots if you have more than 2 players. You're also told here that once the remaining summoning stones have been destroyed, you'll now read section break number 2. Either way, when new monsters are spawned, you set them on the target space, and once that's filled, any additional spawned monsters need to go in any empty space as close to that one as possible. If you have more than one option, like we have here, then the players choose where the additional monsters go. Spawned monsters are treated exactly like monsters who get added to the map when a new room is set up, meaning that they'll act during the round they were added, following the rules that we saw in the second video of this series. Now, another new element of the setup, which will be a part of every scenario moving forward, is the addition of the Battle Goal deck, which is made up of cards with this back. You'll shuffle these and then deal 2 of them to each player. Each person looks at their own secretly and then picks one to keep, returning the other unseen back to the box. Your goal will have a private objective that you're working towards during the scenario, but you must avoid discussing it with the other players. If you complete your objective, don't say anything. Instead, this is resolved at the end once the scenario is successfully completed. So we'll talk more about this later. As the final step of the setup for this and every future scenario, you place this element board in the play area with each of these 6 element tokens set in the column labeled inert. You'll remember at the end of the last scenario, players removed all of the ability cards labeled with an A or B at the top, and now only have abilities labeled with a 1. Many of these will have new actions for you to use, but don't worry, they may look different, but we've covered all the rules for them in the previous videos. Well, except for one rule. Some of these actions will have element symbols associated with them known as their element affinity. As long as you do some portion of that action, then these symbols will resolve as well. Element symbols are not optional. If you perform an action or part of an action that activates it, then you must resolve it, which is known as infusing the battlefield with its power. You show this by moving the related token to the strong column of the element board at the end of the turn in which the action was performed. So if I resolve this card first, the token wouldn't move until after this card was resolved as well and my turn was over. Then the token would go here. Now, at the end of each round, after all the characters and monsters have performed their turns, you'll move any elements from the column they are in to the next one over on the left, even at the end of the round that this token might have just gotten here. However, as long as an element is in either of these two columns, it can be consumed to power up other abilities which benefit from elements like this one here. They will show that element's symbol with a cross through it like this. And when using one of these bonuses to augment an action, the player moves the symbol from either the strong or waning column, wherever it is, back into the inert column. And then you resolve this additional power. Some abilities may have separate element augments, and the player can pick which one to use, or if the element symbols are available, resolve more than one. The important thing to remember is that you cannot infuse an element and then use that element during the same turn. Remember, you only add elements to the board at the end of your turn, not during it. So for example, I couldn't play this card, which would move the wind element over to the strong column, and then resolve this effect, which would spend it. Because again, this element wouldn't get added to the board until after both of these cards had already been resolved at the end of my turn. So in this way, adding elements to the board is really about setting up powerful opportunities later, either for yourself or for another player. So for example, if I did infuse an element on my turn, then the other player could, on their turn right away, consume it with one of their actions. Monsters will also have abilities that infuse and consume elements as well, and monsters will always consume them if they can. And then each activated monster of that set will gain the related benefit. This is a multicolored wild element, and if you see it, the players choose which element is infused, or if it had an X through it, which element is consumed. Those are all the rules for the fourth scenario, and when it ends, there's a couple of new things you need to resolve, but don't forget to record your golden experience as well. And also don't forget that in addition to whatever experience you have on your wheel, you always gain 6 experience per completed scenario. The scenario reward also lists a numbered item, so you will look for and collect it from the box. Only one character will get this, so it's up to the players to decide who will collect it. Each player now reveals their private battle goal as well, and if you successfully completed it, you gain a check mark, as you're reminded of here. These you'll record by checking off the leftmost empty square in this area of your character's notes. Once you've checked off all 3 in a group, then you immediately check off a bonus perk as well. Now, if you didn't complete your battle goal, you don't get the check, but otherwise there's no penalty for failing it. Each player's personal goal is then shuffled back into the original deck, where they might be drawn again in a later scenario. In preparation for the next scenario, each player now retrieves the 3 ability cards from their character box, labeled with an X here at the top. You will have these for the rest of the campaign, and they will give you more options before each new scenario that you attempt. Keep in mind though, this means that the Hatchet character now has 13 ability cards, but you can only bring as many ability cards into a scenario as the number listed here on your character mat. So after looking at the upcoming scenario's information, you'll then have to pick which of these you're going to use and which 3 you'll leave behind. And you can change which ones you use and which ones you leave behind at the start of every scenario from this point onward. With that, you can now save your game or continue with the 5th scenario, and you'll find a link for the instructions for that one in the description below. But otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play the 4th scenario of Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. Also, if you found this video helpful, consider liking, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notifications anytime we post a new video. But until next time, thanks for watching.